A lonely man keeps seeing a stray German shepherd bow to him every morning. But when he finally follows the dog, what he discovers beneath an old oak tree changes everything. A story of loyalty beyond death, of a promise kept, and a dog whose final act will break your heart and heal it all at once. It had been raining for days in the little town of Hollow Creek, the kind of steady, whispering rain that turned streets to silver ribbons and filled the air with that earthy scent of soaked pine. Finn sat inside the cafe where he often worked, watching droplets race each other down the glass. He liked quiet mornings like this, the hum of distant thunder, the warmth of a cup between his hands. After everything that had happened with Piper, the world had finally begun to feel gentle again. But that morning, something different caught his eye. Across the street, at the corner near the bakery, a dog stood in the rain, unmoving, head lowered, body trembling slightly. It wasn't the kind of trembling that came from cold alone. It was deeper, the kind that came from fear or exhaustion. Its fur was a dull mix of gray and brown, plastered flat from the rain, and every few seconds, it bowed, slowly, purposefully, like it was waiting for something. At first, Finn thought the dog was just stretching or shaking water off, but no, there was intention in it. The way it lowered its head, front paws dipping slightly forward, then looked up at every passerby as if pleading, "Please see me." Most people didn't. A few threw glances. One even muttered "stray" and hurried under an umbrella. But the dog stayed, bowing again and again, its eyes following each human with quiet hope. Something in Finn's chest tightened. He knew that feeling, that silent reaching for help no one offers. He set down his coffee, grabbed his raincoat, and stepped out into the cold drizzle. As he crossed the street, the dog noticed him. It froze, then lowered its head once more, a deep bow, slow and deliberate. Finn stopped a few feet away, unsure if it was greeting or apology. "Hey there," he said softly, kneeling. "It's okay." The dog's tail gave the faintest twitch. Then it bowed again. This close, Finn could see its ribs through the soaked fur. Around its neck hung something odd, a frayed red ribbon tied in a loose knot, faded almost pink from weather and time. "Where did you come from?" he whispered. He reached out a hand, letting it hang in the air. The dog didn't flinch, but its eyes, those deep amber eyes, they seemed to study him, searching for something. Then as Finn's fingers brushed its muzzle, the dog dropped low again, nose to the ground in another bow, this time trembling. It wasn't asking for food. It wasn't afraid. It was showing him something, a kind of desperate respect or maybe guilt. Finn couldn't tell which, but the gesture hit him like a weight. "Okay," he murmured. "You don't have to bow, buddy. You're safe." The dog blinked, then turned suddenly, padding away down the street. Finn hesitated, then followed, rain soaking through his coat. The dog didn't run far, just far enough to make sure Finn kept up, looking back every few steps with that same low, bowing movement. It led him through the back lanes of Hollow Creek, past the old hardware store, across the narrow bridge that arched over a swollen creek, and finally toward the edge of the woods. There, near a cluster of abandoned sheds, the dog stopped. It bowed again. Then it looked up at Finn and whined. Finn stepped closer, his boots sinking into wet earth. He noticed paw prints in the mud, small ones next to the larger set. Puppies? His pulse quickened. He knelt, scanning the shadows between the sheds. Then he heard it, a faint whimper, almost drowned by the rain. "Hey, is someone there?" The dog barked once, sharp, urgent, then pawed at the shed door. The old hinges creaked. Finn pushed gently, and a waft of damp air and straw met his nose. Inside, tucked behind a pile of rotting crates, were two tiny shapes, barely weaned pups shivering and crying softly. Oh no. The dog, their mother, he realized, stepped in and nudged them forward, then turned to Finn and bowed again, head pressed so low it nearly touched the mud. Finn's throat tightened. She wasn't begging for food. She was begging for help. "Okay," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I understand." He took off his coat, wrapped the two pups carefully inside, and looked at the mother. "Let's get you out of here." For the first time, she didn't bow. Instead, she stepped forward, pressing her wet nose to his hand just once, before following him into the rain. Finn carried the pups close, feeling their tiny heartbeats against his chest, and for a moment beneath the storm, the world felt still. He didn't know what their story was yet, but whatever had made this mother bow to strangers, It had broken her heart, and soon he would learn. It would break his too. The drive back to Finn's cabin was slow and heavy with rain. The wipers barely kept up as he cradled the coat-wrapped bundle on the passenger seat. Every few minutes one of the pups whimpered, and their mother, whom he'd started calling Luna, leaned closer, whining softly in reply. Finn's hand rested between them, trying to offer comfort he barely knew how to give. By the time they reached the cabin, dusk had swallowed the road. The forest around his home shimmered with rainwater and mist, the pines whispering in the wind. Finn opened the door and stepped inside, careful to dry Luna with an old towel before she padded in, her paws leaving little wet marks across the wooden floor. The pups, wrapped snug in a blanket, let out soft squeaks. Finn set them by the fire, lighting kindling until the flames glowed gold. Luna stood over them protectively, trembling not from fear now but from relief. She lowered her head again in that familiar reverent bow, this time directed toward the warmth, toward safety. Finn crouched beside her. "You don't have to bow anymore," he whispered, voice thick. "You did your part. They're safe now." But Luna looked up at him and did it again, slower, her eyes filled with something deeper, something that made his chest ache. Gratitude, apology, maybe both. As the storm raged outside, Finn tended to them, warm water, small bowls of soft food. The pups ate hungrily while Luna barely touched hers. When he reached to check her neck, he noticed an old collar mark hidden under the fur where the ribbon had been tied. It wasn't just decoration. It had been a leash, cut clean long ago. "You belonged to someone," Finn murmured.
"Did they hurt you?"
Luna didn't move, but her ears flattened slightly, and that was answer enough. Later, as the fire dimmed, Finn sat by the window watching the rain. The events of the day swirled in his mind. Her bowing, the pups, that haunted look in her eyes. Something told him there was more to the story, something hidden in the silence between her gestures. He thought about Piper, his first rescue, the one who had taught him how to listen to silence. Piper had been broken once too. Maybe that's why he'd noticed Luna at all. Broken souls recognize their own. When he finally drifted to sleep on the couch, Luna curled near the hearth with her pups tucked beneath her. For the first time, she didn't bow. Morning brought sunlight through the trees, filtered gold over dew. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean. Finn stepped outside, stretching, his boots squelching in wet earth. The air smelled like pine and promise. Luna followed quietly, watching as he filled a bowl with fresh water. The pups tumbled clumsily behind her, their bellies round now, tiny tails wagging. Finn couldn't help but smile. "Looks like you three made it through the night." He noticed Luna staring down the path leading toward town. Her ears flicked forward, alert. Then she turned to him and bowed again. "Still trying to tell me something?" She barked once sharply and trotted a few steps down the path before stopping and looking back. Finn sighed, grabbing his jacket. "All right, Luna, lead the way." The forest was quiet except for the hum of morning insects. Luna led him down narrow trails, through ferns and dripping branches until they reached a clearing. There among the wildflowers stood an old wooden cross. It was simple, 2 planks nailed together, leaning slightly. At its base lay a rusted collar and what looked like the remains of a faded photograph sealed in plastic. Finn's throat tightened. Luna approached the cross slowly, bowed low, and pressed her nose to the ground. "Oh, Luna," he whispered. He knelt beside her, brushing away moss to reveal the faint letters carved into the wood. "To my brave girl. Wait for me." A chill ran through him. This wasn't random. Luna had belonged to someone who loved her and had lost her. But where was that person now? Luna looked up at him, eyes wet, and let out a soft sound, a whine that turned into a quiet moan. Then she pawed the earth beside the grave as if urging him to dig. Finn hesitated, then pushed back the soil gently. A few inches down he found a small metal tag tied to a chain. He wiped the dirt away. "Luna, if found, bring her home." On the back was an address. Finn's hands trembled. You've been trying to get back home this whole time." Luna bowed one last time at the cross, then turned toward the direction of town, her tail still, her pace steady. She didn't look back to see if he followed. She already knew he would. Finn swallowed hard and whispered, "Let's bring you home, girl." And as they walked back through the sunlit forest, He had no idea that the truth waiting at that address would shatter everything he thought he understood about loyalty, love, and loss. The address on the tag led Finn down an old country road that curved along the ridge. By mid-afternoon, clouds had begun to gather again, a gray hush rolling over the hills. Luna trotted beside him, her gait steady, her head occasionally tilting up toward the sound of passing cars, as if searching for a voice she still remembered. The pups rode bundled in a basket on the truck's seat, their tiny heads peeking over the edge. Finn hadn't spoken much during the drive. Something about the coordinates on that tag gnawed at him. The way Luna had bowed at that cross, it wasn't just mourning. It was devotion. It was duty. Whatever waited at that address, he knew it wouldn't be simple. The GPS chimed. Destination ahead. He slowed the truck as an old white farmhouse came into view, half hidden behind overgrown hedges and a broken fence. The mailbox leaned sideways, its paint peeled but still legible. The Miller family. Luna stiffened the moment she saw it. Her ears perked. Then, without waiting for instruction, she jumped from the truck and sprinted up the path. Finn barely managed to grab the basket of pups before running after her. Luna, wait. She reached the porch and stopped, bowing low, her chest against the floorboards, tail wagging once, then going still. The door was shut tight, but her body trembled as if every scent and shadow on that porch whispered to her. Finn stepped closer and knocked gently. The sound echoed hollow through the house. No response. He tried again. At last, the door creaked open a few inches. An elderly woman stood there, her face pale and lined with disbelief. Luna? The woman whispered. The dog froze. Then, with a sound halfway between a cry and a bark, Luna pushed forward, pressing her head into the woman's knees. The woman dropped to her own, sobbing, fingers trembling as they traced Luna's fur. Oh my God, you came back. After all this time, Finn stepped back, his throat tight. He hadn't expected this kind of reunion. The woman clung to Luna, whispering over and over, my brave girl, my brave girl. When she finally looked up at Finn, her eyes were wet but steady. You found her? He nodded. She was hiding in the woods with 2 pups. The woman's face crumpled again. Pups? Oh, Luna. Finn carried the basket forward and set it gently on the porch. The woman stared down at the tiny faces inside, her hand covering her mouth. She must have had them after she ran. I thought she was gone forever. They went inside. The house smelled faintly of cedar and old books. Framed photos lined the hallway. Luna as a puppy sitting proudly beside a man in uniform. Finn paused. Is that your husband? The woman nodded slowly. Mark, he was a firefighter. Luna was his rescue dog. They worked together for years. He loved her more than anything. Then, the fire in Ridge Canyon. He went in and didn't come out. Her voice trembled. Luna was there that night. She kept trying to go back inside. When they pulled her away, she fought them, broke free, and ran into the woods. I searched for weeks, but I never found her. Finn swallowed hard. She made a grave for him. The woman froze. What? He explained, the cross, the collar, the carved words. How Luna had bowed to it every day. Tears slid down the woman's cheeks. That's where they found his body. That's where she must have stayed. All this time she's been guarding him. Luna lay at their feet now, her pups nursing quietly. The old woman brushed a hand over her head. You kept your promise, didn't you? You waited for him. Finn's voice broke softly. She tried to come home. She brought them with her. For a long time, no one spoke. The clock ticked somewhere in the background, steady as a heartbeat. Then the woman looked up. You should stay for dinner. Both of you. All of you, he hesitated. I don't want to intrude. Please, she said. It's been so long since anyone's been here. And Luna, she trusts you. That means something. The evening unfolded like an old photograph, soft, slow, bittersweet. Finn helped fix a simple meal while the woman, whose name was Margaret, told stories of her husband and Luna's rescues, pulling a lost child from floodwaters, finding a hiker after a storm, running into burning houses because she refused to be left behind. She was never just a dog, Margaret said, eyes shining. She was his partner, his heart. Luna lay by the hearth again, her eyes half closed but always flicking toward the door, as if expecting her old master to return. When Finn rose to leave, Margaret stopped him. Would you come by again tomorrow? I'm not sure she'll rest unless she knows you're near. He nodded. Of course. Outside, the night air was cool and still. Finn looked back once at the window. Inside, Luna was bowing again, this time toward the empty chair by the fire. Something told him this story wasn't done. Not yet. The following morning, the air carried that clean, dew-soaked chill that only mountain mornings seem to have. Piper stood by the edge of the field, staring toward the tree line where the deer had vanished the night before. His tail wagged once, then lowered, as if he'd been left waiting for someone who hadn't returned. Finn sipped his coffee, watching him quietly. Something inside him knew the truth wasn't about the deer at all. It was about what that deer represented. A connection, a memory, a loss. "Hey, buddy," Finn called softly, setting his mug down and crouching beside him. "You miss someone, don't you?" Piper turned his head, ears twitching. Then he did it again. He bowed. Slow. Careful. Reverent. His chest nearly touched the grass. His eyes looking not at Finn this time, but toward a faint mound beneath the oak tree near the fence. Finn followed his gaze. A small stone sat there, one he hadn't noticed before. He frowned and walked closer. It wasn't just a random stone. It had been deliberately placed. Beneath it, the earth had been disturbed not long ago. Finn's throat tightened. "Oh no." Piper followed him, steps slow, tail lowered. He sat before the mound, bowed once more, and let out a long, aching whine that seemed to come from the depths of memory. Finn crouched, brushing away some of the dried leaves. There were old dog tags there, rusted but still legible. The name read, Scout. Finn froze. The world seemed to narrow around him. Scout. He remembered that name. The locals had spoken of an old man, a retired gamekeeper named Walter, who'd lived here before the fire, before the land had been sold to developers. Walter had an aging German shepherd who'd gone missing after the tragedy. They said the old man never recovered and the dog was never found. But here was proof that maybe the dog had come home. And Piper, sweet, quiet Piper, had known exactly where to bow all along. Finn's voice was barely a whisper. "He's your friend, isn't he? You knew him." Piper's ears flicked and he pressed his nose to the earth, exhaling a deep sigh that trembled through his body. Finn felt tears sting his eyes. He sat beside him, resting a hand on Piper's back, and together they stayed like that in the morning silence. For the first time, Finn understood what the bow meant. It wasn't just submission. It was grief, reverence, a way of saying thank you. That night, Finn couldn't sleep. He kept seeing that small mound beneath the oak, the faint bow of Piper's head. He imagined the old man, Walter, calling for Scout during the storm, the two souls separated in chaos. Maybe Scout had tried to come home but never made it far enough. And now, years later, Piper had been bowing not to Finn, but to memory itself. Finn rose before dawn and went outside. The world was gray-blue, quiet but for the call of a distant crow. Piper waited near the fence again, as if expecting something. Finn brought a small bouquet of wildflowers he'd gathered, setting them gently beside the stone. Piper bowed once more. Finn did too. They stayed that way until the light changed, the first golden rays spilling through the trees, painting everything in soft warmth. Later that day, Finn went into town. He stopped at the old library, searching through local records. He found Walter's obituary tucked into a binder of forgotten papers. There was a photo of the man smiling beside a younger German shepherd, Scout. The caption beneath read, "The most loyal companion a man could ask for." Finn swallowed hard. He photocopied the image and took it home, placing it near the window where the light fell softly across it. When Piper came inside, he walked straight toward it, sat down, and wagged his tail once. That night, Finn finally spoke aloud to the quiet. "You did good, Piper. You brought him home." But the next morning, Piper wasn't by the fence, or the porch, or anywhere near the cabin. Panic surged through Finn. He searched the woods, calling his name until his voice cracked. Then, just as the sun began to dip behind the hills, he spotted movement near the stream. Piper stood ankle-deep in the water, staring at something caught between the roots of a fallen tree. Finn hurried closer and stopped cold. It was another tag. Old, faded, matching the one on Scout's grave. Finn's heart pounded. He reached for it, his hands trembling. Piper let out a soft, mournful sound and bowed once more. Lower, slower this time. Finn looked at him, realization dawning like a storm. You found what was left, didn't you? The dog's silence was answer enough. Finn sank to his knees, clutching the tag to his chest. You're not bowing to me, Piper. You're asking me to remember him. The woods echoed faintly with the sound of the stream, the wind in the leaves and the quiet heartbeat of understanding between man and dog. And in that moment, Finn swore he felt another presence, gentle, proud, watching over them both. For the first time since Piper had arrived, Finn felt like the quiet around the cabin wasn't just peace, it was purpose. Everything the dog had done suddenly made sense. Every bow, every gaze toward the oak tree, every night spent staring at the horizon. Piper had been trying to tell him this story all along. That night the air was heavy with mist. Finn built a small fire outside and sat beside it, the tag he'd found glinting faintly in his palm. Piper lay at his feet silent, his head resting on his paws. Flames danced across his fur, catching shades of gold and amber that looked almost unreal. Finn spoke softly. You carried this, didn't you? All this time. Piper's ear flicked, his eyes lifting just enough to meet Finn's. There was no bark, no whine, just that patient stillness that said more than words ever could. Finn placed the tag beside the one they'd unearthed at the grave. Two names reunited after years apart. He exhaled shakily. We'll make sure he's remembered. Both of you. The next morning, Finn loaded some supplies into his truck. He had a plan. Piper hopped into the passenger seat, tail wagging faintly, his expression calm but curious. They drove into town, stopping first at the small hardware store where Finn picked out a weathered piece of cedar. Then at the engraver's shop, where he spent nearly an hour explaining exactly what he wanted carved. When they finally returned home, the sky was painted in hues of rose and violet. Finn set to work beneath the oak tree while Piper watched quietly. Together, they placed a new stone marker where Scout's grave rested. The polished cedar plaque read, Scout, loyal friend of Walter. Found peace at last. Brought home by Piper. Finn stepped back, dirt still on his hands, his voice trembling. There. Now he'll never be forgotten. Piper approached slowly, sniffed the plaque, then bowed deeply once more. One last time. But this time when he lifted his head, something had changed. His eyes were softer, lighter, as if a weight had finally been lifted from his chest. Finn felt a lump rise in his throat. It's okay now, isn't it? Piper pressed his head against Finn's leg, a quiet whimper breaking through the stillness. Finn sank to the ground, wrapping his arms around the dog's neck. They stayed like that for a long time, until the shadows stretched long and the first stars appeared above the trees. That night, Finn dreamed of a man standing beside the oak tree. The man was older, weathered, wearing a flannel jacket. A German shepherd stood beside him, Scout. Both of them were looking at Piper, pride glowing in their eyes. The man smiled faintly and tipped his cap before fading into the morning light. When Finn awoke, Piper was already waiting by the door, tail thumping softly. The air outside was crisp, full of life. The world seemed gentler somehow, lighter. Over the following weeks, something shifted in both of them. Piper began to smile more often, if such a thing could be said about a dog. He ran through the fields with an energy Finn hadn't seen before, chasing the wind, barking joyfully at the sky. And Finn, for the first time in years, began writing again. Not just reports or notes, but stories. He wrote about loyalty, loss, and the quiet way animals carry our history when we can't bear it ourselves. One evening, he sat on the porch with Piper curled beside him. You know, Finn murmured, maybe you weren't sent here just for Scout. Maybe you were sent here for me too. Piper tilted his head, eyes glowing with reflected starlight. Finn chuckled softly. Yeah, guess we both needed to remember something. When the wind picked up, it carried the scent of pine and rain, the kind that whispered of new beginnings. Piper lifted his nose, ears pricking, as if listening to something far away. Then he turned to Finn and bowed again, slowly, gracefully. But this time the gesture wasn't sorrowful. It was gratitude. Finn smiled, blinking back tears. You're welcome, buddy. He reached out, resting his hand gently on Piper's head. You brought a ghost home. And maybe you brought me home too. They sat beneath the oak until darkness swallowed the world, the plaque glinting faintly in the firelight. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. and Finn thought he could almost hear the faint sound of paws moving through leaves, Scout's spirit running free once more. And beside him, Piper rested peacefully, his mission complete, his heart finally still. Weeks turned into months, and the cabin became something different, a place of healing. The silence that once felt lonely now hummed with quiet life. Wind chimes, the creak of the porch boards, the soft rhythm of Piper's paws as he followed Finn everywhere. The oak tree had become their heart, a sacred space beneath which the past and present seemed to coexist peacefully. Every morning, Finn brought his coffee there, sometimes reading aloud from the journal he'd begun, the story of Walter, Scout, and Piper. He wanted their story to live beyond this place, to remind people that love leaves traces stronger than time or distance. Piper listened each morning, head tilted, tail thumping faintly at certain moments as if he understood every word. One chilly dawn, Finn noticed something odd. Piper was gone from his usual spot on the porch. Panic flickered for a moment until he spotted movement across the field. Piper stood at the edge of the mist, looking toward the distant hills. Finn followed. "Where are you going, boy?" The dog looked back at him once, eyes bright with that same deep knowing Finn had seen the first day they met. Then slowly Piper bowed. Not to Finn, not to the grave, but to the world itself. It was the same motion as before, humble, full of meaning. But this time it wasn't grief that guided him. It was peace. Acceptance. Finn knelt beside him, heart twisting with a mix of love and dread. "You're saying goodbye, aren't you?" Piper didn't move, only closed his eyes and leaned into Finn's hand. For a long moment, man and dog stayed there in the mist, breathing the same cold morning air, souls intertwined in the stillness of goodbye. That evening, Piper slept longer than usual. His breathing was steady, calm. Finn sat beside him by the fire, stroking his fur, whispering, "You did everything you came here to do." When dawn broke, the cabin was quiet. Too quiet. Piper was still, peaceful, his head resting on Finn's boots as though he'd fallen asleep guarding him one last time. Finn's tears came silently. He buried Piper beneath the oak tree right beside Scout. The plaque he carved for him read, "Piper, the messenger who remembered. You brought the lost home." For days after the cabin felt impossibly empty, Finn still caught himself listening for the soft patting of paws, the quiet sighs before sleep. But slowly the grief turned to gratitude. Every bow Piper had given now replayed in his memory, not as a wound, but as a blessing. He finished the story a month later, a book titled The Dog Who Bowed. It wasn't a grand novel, just a heartfelt chronicle of what Piper had taught him, that love sometimes returns in quiet forms, carrying unfinished goodbyes and unspoken promises. When the book was published, Finn donated every cent to a small rescue organization named Scouts Haven, built in memory of both dogs. It became a sanctuary for animals too traumatized to trust again. And on the wooden sign above the entrance, carved in bold letters, were the words, "Every soul deserves a homecoming." Visitors often said the place had a strange peace about it. Animals who refused to eat or be touched seemed to calm after a few days there. Some nights, volunteers swore they saw a faint golden figure, a German shepherd sitting beneath an oak near the edge of the property, bowing gently before fading into the mist. Finn never denied it. In fact, every time he visited, he'd bring flowers to the original oak and sit quietly, smiling at the wind. "You're still watching, aren't you, old friend?" he'd whisper. And sometimes, when the breeze moved through the leaves just right, he could almost hear two sets of footsteps circling behind him, one light and young, one strong and sure, before everything settled into peace again. Years later, on the anniversary of Piper's passing, Finn found a stray sitting at the gate of Scouts Haven, muddy, thin, trembling but with the same deep eyes that carried a story untold. The dog bowed as soon as Finn approached. He laughed through tears. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me." He knelt, extending a hand. "All right then. Let's hear what you've come to tell me." The new dog pressed his head into Finn's palm, warm and alive, tail thumping weakly. The circle had begun again, different but the same heartbeat running through it. As the sun set behind the trees, Finn looked toward the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Piper, for showing me how to listen." The wind rose gently, swirling the fallen leaves, and for a brief, perfect instant, he could have sworn he saw two shadows bowing together at the edge of the light. Then they were gone. But Finn knew. He would never walk alone again.